You're listening to Permission to Shine, the podcast. Stories of overcoming obstacles and finding self-empowerment with Sherisse Bisram, Inner Power Activation Leader. The Oxford Dictionary describes permission as the action of officially allowing someone to do a particular thing, consent, authorization. What if you were that someone and you gave yourself the permission to be everything you wanted to be and more? No more playing small and accepting less than. You are worthy of the life of your dreams, regardless of what it is that you've been through. And honestly, it's exactly what you've been through that shaped you into the version of yourself that you are now. Like a diamond, you've endured so much, but instead of breaking, you have become stronger and brighter. And if that's not a reason to shine, then I don't know what is. And if nature can do it, then why the hell can't you? You are brave, you are strong, you are powerful, and you are enough. Hear my call and give yourself the permission to shine, because you don't realise how many people are inspired by your light. Hello everyone, I am so excited to be joined by the amazing Alessia. We have literally been in the same group for a couple of months now, and I keep meaning to get her on board, and then one day she posted something and I was like, yeah, that's it, that's the moment, that was the universe drawing you into me, Alessia. Thank you for being here. If you'd like to give the audience a bit more about who you are, your title.
Yeah, so I'm Alessia. I am a single mama to 3 children, and I'm a confidence transformation coach and domestic abuse mentor. So I've been doing that for about, nearly 3 years now.
Amazing. And I love, everything you stand for and the reason why you do it. And obviously that's one of the reasons why I wanted you to come on board, because I just feel like even in my own family, your story isn't too far removed from what my family's been through, and people I know, like so many women that are experiencing similar situations, and obviously men too, but obviously all of my stuff is geared towards women really, but I just feel like it's not spoken about enough. It's not normalized enough, and I don't think people realize the depths of how it can transform your life in a really hard way. So yeah, I would love for you to please go into as much detail as you'd like to share, and just tell us about your story.
Yeah, okay, it's a long one. Bear with. So when I was growing up, it was very much, I was growing up in like a quite everyone got married. When they got married, it was forever. It was that kind of vibe, and that was what you had to aim for in life. And I was never the kind of girl that dreamt of that, but I knew that's what I wanted to do. So be a wife, a good wife, have like a lovely home and have the kids and all that jazz. So I got into a relationship when I was 19, and I think I was quite naive about love and about what a healthy relationship was, because I don't think that schools do anything which they should do around relationships. So I was very naive, like the whole Disney thing of you find a prince, you fall in love, and it's happily ever after. But when I got into this relationship, I was with him for about 7 months, and in that whole time, he was the reason I changed completely as a person, as a woman. So he was physically abusive, sexually abusive, and he was psychologically abusive. So when I had the guts to then end it with him, he then stalked me for nearly 4 years. So that was really quite, well, that's where I got my complex PTSD from, basically. And that's when I started self-harming. My mental health just went, it just went into an absolute meltdown. And at that day and age, stalking was not a crime. So nothing was done about it. And in terms of the whole domestic abuse situation, the police did nothing about it. It was just I was just let down everywhere, and there was no knowledge and understanding of any charities to support me, nothing. And I was so young. So because of that experience, I then wanted to work in a field where I could help other women and help families who were going through similar situations. So I trained up and got into that role. So I worked with loads and loads of women, supporting them, helping them through it all, getting them to escape if need be, and giving them tools and the techniques to really kind of boost their confidence and get them in a place where they felt that they had their power and their control back, because you lose that so much and you lose your identity as well. But the issue with that role was I felt that domestic abuse was still primarily only aimed at physical abuse. And actually, there's a whole rainbow of it. And this is where I struggled. So I trained in a domestic abuse course called the Freedom Program, which is amazing, but it does not focus on all the other elements that that come along when it comes to domestic abuse, such as the coercive control, the narcissism, and all of that. And that was where I really struggled, because I don't feel professionals understood it. And really, in my over 15 years experience in that role, they were the main areas of domestic abuse that I felt women were going through, was the coercive control, financial abuse, and all of that. So anyway, I was in the field, and as you would think, you'd think I would have been aware of the signs and all of that jazz. But I think because I had been in a physically abusive relationship, I had that in my head as the relationship you don't get involved in. So then when I met my ex-husband, he was a very calm person. He was very he had a good job. He was just very together. He was quiet. And I think the calm and the quiet was what made me think, oh, that means you're safe, which was so wrong. So I got into a relationship with him. And when I look back, I see the signs so early on, but I never saw them at that time. And I would always be someone who would excuse people's behavior all the time. So for me, it was, oh, he had a really bad childhood, so he just needs support. He just needs me to fix him, which you can't fix him. So he was never physical, but it got worse and worse and worse, to the point where I never knew what he earned. I never knew what happened at his job. So he's a police officer, he still is. So I never knew what he did within his role, like what had happened that shift, nothing. I wouldn't know about his shifts either. So it was very much me and the children. We had to revolve around him. And it was like we had a separate life almost. Like I had to keep the house together, sort the children out, give him money every month. I had to give 3/4 of my wage. So I was left with around £200 a month to pay for petrol for me to work, anything I needed, and anything children needed, and food. So I didn't know how much he earned. So I didn't know what income was coming into the home. I just knew that that's what I had to give him, and that was the end of it. And I had to provide everything else for me and my kids. And I was very much a single parent. Like, I would say I was a single parent from the moment that my eldest was born. And I think I went along almost in denial that it was happening. And I think I felt embarrassed, because in my eyes, it was like, well, I should really know this. Like, why I'm helping other women. Yeah, I can't help myself. And I was a facilitator of a domestic abuse program, telling them all these things. And then deep down, I was like, yeah, he does that, he does that, he does that. But I just kind of brushed everything under the carpet. And also it was like that fear of being a single parent on my own, because they make you feel like you can't do anything without them. So, you know, I tried to end it a few times when a light bulb came on, and he would either tell me he was going to kill himself, or that he would take the children away from me, tell everyone about my mental health issues. So therefore he would be the stable parent and he'd be the protective parent, and I'd have to go and get a full-time job. I'd have to go and get a flat, and he would stay in the family home with the kids. So it put on me a lot of fear. So therefore that stopped me, and I just stayed there. And obviously the whole, like, I'm going to change, da, 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 da. So I think the bit that really hit me was when I was pregnant with our third child. I was 7 months pregnant, and it was around January time, I think, and it was cold, wet, and it was evening time. I had some wrapping and some loose papers and stuff, and I put them in a bin bag, tied it up, and left it outside. I can't remember whether he'd come home from a shift or it wasn't, or he was just still in his uniform. I'm not sure, but he literally came into the kitchen. He went, "You didn't tie it up properly. All the stuff's all over the garden." I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll do it tomorrow." When really, looking back, it should have been, I'm 7 months pregnant, you can go and do that. But you just don't think like that. You're like a robot. You do what they want. So I was like, "I'll do it tomorrow." And he went, no, you're going to do it now. And I was like, okay, all right. So I went out there. It was raining. I was cold. I was wet. And then we used to have this thorn bush on the left side of the garden, and loads of it went within that bush, but I couldn't reach it. So I came in with what I'd collected, and I said, I can't reach that stuff in there because it's in the thorn bush. And I said, so, you know, I can't get it. And he was like, well, get on your hands and knees. And that was the point I was like, that's not okay. And that's when it really kind of just went, boom, what the hell? And I was really angry. And I'd never, ever called him abusive before that day. So I went out and did it. And I was crying because I was angry. I was sad. I was shocked, all of the things. I couldn't get all of it, but I got what I could. Came back in and I was just wet as anything. And I was so angry. And normally I would just hide all my emotions and just cry without him knowing. And that's how I dealt with it, before. And he was laughing and he was like, why are you looking like that? And I was like, because I cannot believe you just made me do that. And he said, so what are you going to do about it then? And I said, well, that's abusive. And that was the first time I actually said that. And I was scared. But I think I got to a point where I thought, I've done this for so many years, and he was getting worse and worse. So I said it. And I think he was a bit shocked, and he went, okay, so what are you going to do about it? And I said, well, I can call the police. And then that's when he just looked at me, smirked, and went, I am the police. So that was when the light bulb went off, and I thought, actually, I'm not safe with you anymore. So from that point, I thought, right, things need to change. So I was thinking, I just need to have my son, and then I need to try and sort something out. I started to drip feed little bits and pieces to close friends and family about him.
Sorry, this is what I was going to say. Just before you carry on, I was just about to say that to you, because I feel like even in your very first relationship, was your family and friends aware of what was happening?
No, I kept all of it, because I think I was so young. I was 19. I don't think I knew what to do. I know that sounds really bizarre, but I think you go into such a state of shock. And he even had my mobile phone, like that first relationship. And for example, when I went to go and get a new contract mobile phone, I wasn't allowed to go on my own. So he took me, and I remember going into the shop, and because my male friend was in there and gave me a really good deal, I went with his deal, not with my ex-boyfriend's deal. And because of that, he went mental, and he literally grabbed my elbow, dragged me through a shopping centre, took me into the car, and literally 2 spaces, there was like a gap, no cars in between. There was a car with loads of women in it. And I was sat there looking at them as he was like trying to punch me and just trying to scare me, screaming at me. And they were staring at me in shock. And I remember mouthing help, and they didn't. So I think that made me think, okay, I can't really tell anybody about this, because, what are they going to do to help me? I'm kind of stuck. And there was that fear that if I told people, he would find out, and then I get more of a consequence for that. So, it's really hard. So with then my ex-husband, so that happened, and so I started to like drip feed little bits and pieces to people, but I don't think people really know what to say half the time.
Do you think as well that you probably isolated yourself so much in that relationship that people didn't really know what was going on with you just in general? So even if you did come out with that, they probably didn't even question it, because I guess from your past relationship, they're probably used to that pattern of you just, as we, it's that thing, isn't it? Western culture, when they talk about, they're in relationships, so they're whipped almost. So it's like that idea that all you care about is your person. Well, actually, sometimes it's actually a massive red flag, isn't it? For me, I think that in a lot of, with my friends and stuff, I'm very aware that if they get into a new relationship and I don't speak to them for like a year, I'm like, okay, something's wrong now. So I think for anyone that's in that situation listening in, if you haven't spoken to a friend for a while and they're in a new relationship, just check in. I mean, likely it might not be anything, but I feel like it's always worth just being extra aware, because again, if you're in that situation where you're completely trapped and debilitated, just someone just reaching out to you, be like, are you okay? Like, really, are you okay? I haven't spoken to you in a really long time. That might be the opening they need, right?
Absolutely.
But sorry, carry on. I was
honestly,
just wondering the whole way through.
Whenever you need, like, it's fine. No, that's good. That's a good point, to be honest, because he isolated me so much that I didn't see my friends, that I had work Christmas dues. I never went to them because I couldn't, I wasn't allowed to. And having friends over, I had to sneak friends over when he was working a night shift. And it's just all of those things. And I think looking back at my friendships and my family, I think because I excused his behavior for various different reasons, I think they just went along with that. And then also, I think because I was married and had children, I don't think my family recognized that actually I shouldn't have been in that relationship. I think they just thought it's marriage, you kind of just need to get on with it. They didn't really like him, but you know, it's none of their business. Almost that kind of, even though we're very, very close, I think it's that generation as well.
Do you know what's funny though, that you noticed
Yeah.
that they didn't like him? And I wonder
Yeah.
if it's the way he was in his energy that they picked up on that they didn't like. And it's almost like when you're in that relationship, I guess you're fighting for him because you're like, no, this is a man I chose, rah, rah, rah. And I think your family probably instinctively knew something wasn't right, but they couldn't put their finger on it.
Yeah. And also if ever he did come over to my family, to their home, he would sit in a chair and just be on his phone or fall asleep. He didn't really converse, he didn't nothing, and I'd be so embarrassed.
Yeah.
And eventually he stopped doing that anyway. But even on my wedding day, I wasn't excited, I wasn't nervous, I felt nothing. And I think that's a massive flag for myself. And I didn't plan my wedding. I just was like, I don't care, like, you know, you all just do what you want. I was very you know, so I'm not bothered by it. I'm just not one that dreams of a wedding day. But actually, when I look back, it was that I just didn't feel it.
No.
So yeah, so that happened, and then lockdown occurred, and I think I tried to end it with him 3 times before then. So after that incident, I tried to end it with him a few times, and then it was just the same old kind of pattern of stuff, and I would get really, really afraid. And then lockdown happened, and I think for a lot of people, that was either the time that they transformed and they really worked on themselves, or it was a time where people really struggled. And for me, it's a mixture of both. So I was then stuck at home. I was a key worker, so still had to work from home. Plus, I had to homeschool my children. And then I had my younger two who hadn't started school yet. So they were like toddlers. They're 16 months apart with them too. So it was just manic. And I felt like I was going to tip over the edge. And my self-harming, I never told anybody, but I was still self-harming on and off throughout that time. And it was just a way of me coping. And then I remember in lockdown, I was in the shower, and I remember just collapsing down, and I self-harmed, and I cried so much. And I just thought, I can't do this anymore. Even my children will be better off without me. That's the kind of mindset that I got into. And it was terrifying. When I look back, I think, gee, I was in such a bad place. But again, I was so isolated. I didn't see anybody. I couldn't speak to anybody. So then I discovered Gabrielle Bernstein. Is that her name? I discovered her book, Universe Has Your Back. And literally that book opened my eyes, and I was like, oh my God, there's this like world that I didn't even know. And I've always been a spiritual person. So I've grown up as a Catholic. I'm not a Catholic anymore, but I've always been spiritual. I've always been drawn to the moon, and my Italian family are very, when I think about it, they're very spiritual as well. Like my uncle is trained in Reiki and he's amazing with it. And my nonna was very like with the herbs and things and like medicinal with all of that. So I think we've got it in our blood. And I started to discover crystals, and I used to be scared of all that stuff, but then I was just embracing it all. Then I decided I needed extra money to be able to leave him. So I thought, right, I need to bring in some sort of stability for me and my children, because I had no savings, no access to any money apart from what I was earning, but I again had to give him money. So I was like, right, let's try something. So I started an online crystal business, and I started doing that in lockdown, and I absolutely loved it. And I really kind of delved into that world, I guess, and I found myself again. Like I didn't even know what my favorite color was. I hadn't a clue who I was anymore. So I went onto a journey of discovering who I was in lockdown. And I then started to look at my morning routine, and I was like, right, I want to change it. So I started to implement different things that I felt would work for me. And for a person who couldn't even run upstairs, I decided to do couch to 5K. Now, when the kids were asleep, about 9:30 at night, which isn't the safest time, but that was my only time to escape. So I would then go, so he was home, I would then go and do Couch to 5K, and I completed it. And during doing Couch to 5K, I would listen to podcasts about starting a business. I would listen to audiobooks around spirituality and transforming my mindset. So I basically transformed who I was during lockdown through working out, through journaling. I discovered journaling through crystals, through the moon, through various different books, and working on my mindset and my confidence. And then I thought, right, I need to really kind of take more action now. And from doing all of those things, I created a foundation to enable me to feel like I could be capable of creating that positive change I needed.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, before you kind of carry on, obviously that's exactly kind of how my journey went, as in, you know, getting deeper into spirituality, the journaling, all of those things was in that process. Now, mine was similar to yours in the sense that I kind of felt like I can't do this anymore, but mine was because of obviously my toxic behavior patterns of like, real like doing energy and like constant burnout, and you know, realizing that I'd had childhood trauma and like working through all of those things. So that obviously, exactly that, I've always been a dancer, so exercise has been a really important part of my life, but I was doing it for an achievement rather than for my body, like the holistic side of it. But the other part of that I wanted to ask you was, in that process of you transforming, did he notice that, and what was his opinions of it, or did you just stop caring about his opinion?
I think for the first part of the journey, I hid a lot of it because he slept at work. That was it. So it was rare that he was around when I worked out anyway. And then when I started to do the Couch 5K, I think he started to notice that I was changing. And I remember I had gym gear on, and he looked at me and he went, "You're not going out like that." And I was like, well, yeah, I am. And that's when I thought, oh, I've actually like answered back. Like I started to answer back. I started to like have an opinion. I started to have a voice again, because I wasn't allowed to have an opinion before. I had to follow what he thought. So it created more friction between us. Because he just thought, no, I'm not having that. So he would try and put more authority on me. So therefore I would then just step up more. So it was quite, you know,
and that's what you needed though, because I think that you know, that element of him challenging you more gave you more, don't talk to me like that. Whereas before, when you didn't have that inner knowing and that inner connection to yourself, you were just letting him walk all over you. Whereas that actual, he was fueling your fire. So every time he spoke back to you, you were like, I'm coming back stronger. So I think that was a great thing, you know, that you were able to build that, you know, almost resilience through him actually getting stronger. It was like, you're getting even stronger than that. It's like Pac-Man. It's always like you were eating him each time, like, I'm bigger, I'm bigger.
I love that. So you know, that's what I did really. And then I can't remember exactly what happened, but something happened, and I said to him, "That's it, you need to leave." And he refused. He was like, "No, I'm not going. You and the kids have to leave." No, first he said, "You have to leave. The children stay here." And I said, "No, absolutely not. I will have to have the children with me." So, but you need to leave. It's easier for you to go than for me to pack all my stuff up with 3 kids and find somewhere for us to live. But he refused. And so in lockdown, I had to leave the family home, find somewhere to rent on my own with 3 children. And it was, even now when I say it, I can't believe I did it, but I did. Like it was just like, geez.
And what the biggest sign of achievement for you in that time, that you were able to do that, like get yourself out of it and pay that money for somewhere, when like the older versions of you would never comprehend that would ever be possible, and you were like, I'm gonna bloody do this, I'll show you, I'm gonna do it. And that is when he lost all of his power, because he then couldn't control you anymore. You got probably, hopefully, access to your full wage, but the biggest sign was that you chose you, and I bet he couldn't stand that.
Oh, he hated it. And the funny thing is he actually paid for the rental, because he knew if he did that, I would then leave with the children. He would look like the good guy, and also it would be that he still has that element of control, because he's got that still financial hold over me, because he's paid for it. So the way that, so to some people, they'll be like, oh wow, he paid for that house, but it was only because it meant he still had power control. He looked like a good guy, and then also he could kick us out, and still be the good guy, because he knew the moment I left that home, to get back in there, I'd have to take him to court, which would cost me thousands and thousands and thousands. So he knew exactly what he was doing. But I was very much driven by the universe guiding me. So I discovered that the butterfly was my universal sign. So when I went and viewed, I think it was only 3 places available, plus being a single mum of 3 kids, no one wanted to know me. And I was like, oh my gosh, universe, please help me, because I'm struggling here. And so there was this house, and I didn't see butterflies anywhere. But they accepted me because I think they felt sorry for me, bless them. They were so sweet. So I was like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Moved in. And as I walked up the stairs, I looked up, and there was a lampshade that was left there, and it was filled with butterflies. And I just remember crying, going, oh my God, the universe. And from that point on, I've always put all of my faith into universe guiding me and supporting me through everything, even when he was horrific. So the most unsafe time for a woman is when you start to answer back and when you leave. So that's the most unsafe time. So I was very aware of that. And that is definitely when he upped his ante. So he had it in his head, which is so bizarre. He thought we could still be in a relationship, but just live in 2 different houses. That's generally what he thought. He was like, yeah, no, I've still got her. And he wanted me to still need him. He wanted me to have to go to him for things that I needed help with, because I didn't have a clue about bills, because he controlled everything. I didn't even know who our gas and electric provider was, like I had no idea. So I had to start all from scratch. But he was still there, and he still is there. He still tries to control me. But from that, before I left, I trained as a coach. So I got my accreditation in coaching. And then I had all of my qualifications anyway from my previous job. So I just thought, right, I want to now really make a difference to other women's lives. So then that's when I created Daya Coaching. And he belittled it so much. And he was like, you're going to fail. You can't survive without me. You wait and see. You'll come crawling back and all of this. But I'm still doing it nearly 3 years later. And, my kids are happier. I'm happier. And he has done all sorts of different things over the past 3 years since I left. But I feel like I've built such a resilience to be able to manage that and give myself the love that I deserve. And also I've recognized that now I will talk openly about how I feel, as before I wouldn't, because I'd see it almost as failure.
Absolutely.
And fear of judgment as well. But also now I allow myself permission to be myself and to give myself time out if I need.
Absolutely.
Because I just never thought I was allowed to do that before.
No.
Well,
a massive well done to you. And I'm sure that you feel proud of yourself for that. But I know how hard that journey is, because I've been a bystander a few times to this experience. Like everything you're talking about, I know firsthand. I know how all of that works. I know how, they get more aggressive when, you get more stronger. And I also know about how they still think they're in a relationship with you. Like I've seen it all firsthand. And I think because I've seen it all firsthand so many times in my life, that's what actually drew me back into myself, and I didn't want a relationship. So actually I've spent like probably 11 years out of a long-term relationship, because I just witnessed so much of that in my own life that I just didn't want to be a part of it. Now, over my healing process, I've now obviously healed that part of myself that felt like she didn't want to open her heart up to be hurt or whatever. And I've tried to let people in and all of that. But I feel like that's been a journey for me, even on that, because I think maybe from like your children's point of view, like I'm that, so witnessing that and being in that space, it's so important that you leave when you can, because like even now, we always say, like me and my sister would say, that my mum never left. So we didn't get to see her build that strength to walk away. So that's so amazing for your children to see you choose you. Now, obviously, everything's changed since then. We're older, we've healed, we're different parts of our life, but that one moment of your children being able to see you stand in your power fully is amazing. And I think that in itself, it just shows them that you have to put you first. And it's so hard, like, when you're in that situation, and I am speaking for you now, but I feel like for listeners that are listening, you know, it's almost like you go back to being a child again in that situation, isn't it? In that relationship, like, you know, like you said, you didn't know how to do the bills, all of these things. And people are like, well, why would you give them their money? They control everything you are. Like, your brain stops functioning because you go into this, like, almost like this soft state, isn't it? Your mind is like gooey and mushy. So they're almost like you're in a trance and they're just telling you what to do, and you're doing it. It's like a puppet on a string, isn't it? Like, literally that. I can't, and I feel like people don't understand that unless they've witnessed it to see it. And actually, it's only been since I've done my healing journey that I'm actually able to see clearly all of this, both parts to every side, you know, and all the parts in the situation, and understanding actually how our minds work. The coercive control is actually everywhere, you know, like we're talking about in relationships, but, you know, in business, in friendships, you know, I've seen it so many times, and I've probably been a victim to it in certain situations in my life, you know, when it comes to jobs and things like that, and molding myself to be what people wanted me to be, and all sorts of things. I think we all have to some degree, but the real core part of this is obviously what you've done is, you know, the minute that you felt something wasn't, you know, like obviously the whole way through you felt something wasn't right, but you felt like there's more here, or I should be doing something different, and you found that one book that transformed your life. That is the universe and your calling in that moment, right? And you answered the call. Whereas I guess for so many times in your life, you kept that phone down. You're like, no, I'm not allowed, or I shouldn't do that. And also what I want to point out as well for listeners is that when people self-harm, I don't think people understand it from an outside point of view, but from like a mental health perspective, it's release. So all the time that you were so controlled that you were trying to find release in your body and in your life, and that's that release. And that's almost sometimes why people create arguments or get into fights. It's because they are so tightly conflicted in their own body. Like, imagine like a cage around you of whatever it is that's restricting you, and you're just trying to get your way out, and that was your way of doing it. And again, it's something that I've witnessed. I understand exactly what that is, and at the time I didn't, but now I completely see clearly what that is. And I just I feel like if you know someone that is self-harming, or you've been around that, maybe it's a younger person, you know, I would look into what's happening in their life outside of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And there's always a reason. And the way that I would say it to people is, imagine yourself as a laptop. You are programmed in a certain way from your childhood, from all your experiences, from your influences around you. When you then get into that abusive relationship, that person reprograms every single part of your brain, and you don't even know that it's happening. It's so subtle, and they'll make you feel so below them that you have no capabilities anymore. So therefore you need to be there with them, because otherwise what are you going to do without them? How are you going to live, you know? So they just control you in so many ways. And then in terms of self-harming, it's definitely that release. And also, you're in so much emotional pain and distress that you need to redirect your brain into feeling a different type of pain, because it's just too much. That's another reason for it. But there, you know, I don't feel there's enough out there around self-harm. I don't feel there's still enough around about domestic abuse still, even this day. You know, it's a lot better than what it was when I was 19, but still there's so much more work that needs to be done.
Absolutely. No, and that's why I'm so glad that, you know, you are so open to tell your story, because I think so many people are ashamed of what they've been through because they're worried about what people think. But it's that story and that richness. The whole reason why I started this podcast is because that's the part that people connect to, you know, that is that part, that understanding that we are all going through something, you know. So if someone appears outwardly amazing all the time, I can guarantee you they're probably the most conflicted, because if they can't be raw and honest with how they're feeling to the outside world, for me that's a massive red flag on every level. Like, I'm so transparent about everything in my life. You know, if I'm having a bad day, or, you know, if things haven't gone right that day, I'm so open to share that, because that it's honest and raw. You know, I spent so much of my life in a similar situation in terms of like not opening up and just being so confined, like thinking that I had to be this perfect version of myself, or I had to work really hard in order to gain approval and validation, that I didn't share any of it. I didn't speak about my feelings at all, probably for about 20 years, because I just didn't think that was that was weak, you know, and like you
Yeah.
said something similar, you know, is that weakness,
You
even the
have to show you're
crying.
okay all the time, don't you? Almost, it's that
Yeah.
kind. I don't know if it's that generation as well, but I think my upbringing was like that. Like, you know, oh no, we don't talk about that. And it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
but I need to talk about that. So now that I'm so open, I think I shock my parents because I'm just like, la la la
Yeah.
la.
But then
But I
I
feel like I
think,
have to.
yeah, and but for your family as well, like, you know, like for me, culture's a massive part of,
Yeah.
you know, who I am, and obviously for you. And I
Yeah.
feel like the more you open up, I'm sure that they get into that richness of conversation again, because, you know, from my understanding of Italians, they're so like brash and like open,
Oh
and you
God,
know,
yeah.
but I
This
guess
is more
maybe
my mum's side, you see. My
right,
mum's
okay,
side is Polish.
right,
And
okay,
so they fled in World War II, and this is where probably lots of trauma comes
yeah,
from, like ancestral trauma. But yeah, they literally one day the Russians got my granddad's side, I think, and the Germans got my grandma's side, and literally they were just told, right, pack your stuff, you're off. And then their grandparents were like shot in front of them, and then they were just
wow,
literally parted off into these
yeah,
carts. Horrific. And I think a lot of the issues is that my bapcha, so my mum's mum, she came into this country thinking she had to be something to be accepted, because they weren't allowed to be called by their Polish names, they had to be called by an English name.
yeah,
So my granddad was John, but his actual name is Kazimierz. So, you know, it's
yeah,
just they weren't allowed to have their Polish roots here.
absolutely,
So I think a lot of that stems from that you had to
100%,
be, you know, you had to
yeah.
present in a certain way, or you wouldn't be accepted into
You've hit the
society.
nail on the head. That's exactly what it is, you know, even just
Yeah.
from hearing it, you know, like I can absolutely see that. I have a little bit of this little bit of a gift where if someone tells me something, I can find the root of it straight away. So as you're speaking, I'm like,
Wow.
yeah, like doing this like matrix thing in my head where I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, that's it, exactly that, 100%.
Yeah.
And it's so funny actually, because I'm reading a book called I've just finished The Choice by Edith Edgar, and now reading The Gift. I don't know if you've heard of Edith
Oh
Edgar.
no, I've heard of it, but I've not read any of the books.
I would recommend it because it's probably similar to what your grandparents
Oh,
have experienced. That she's
okay.
I think, where is she from? Bulgaria.
Okay.
But that she has to flee and go to well, they try to flee, they end up in Auschwitz. Like a family get
Mm,
obviously killed in front of her, like you said, or go into the gas chambers. And it's just about her story of resilience and how she managed to survive that
yeah.
just by her own, like escaping into her own mind and like telling
Mm,
herself that things will be okay, planning her future. And like the book at the beginning is obviously about that part, and the next part is how she's been able to live her life moving on from that. And she's a therapist now, so some really
David.
incredible stories about how she's helped others. But yeah, it seems very like this is actually that, you know, like what you're speaking about, which is yeah, remarkable. And you know, your family as well, like how incredible that they survived all of that and they got through it all. It's just crazy, isn't it?
Honestly, that's a whole nother podcast. It's an incredible
Absolutely.
story what they went through. It really is.
Absolutely. No,
How the
I'd love
women
to
did
hear
it.
about. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know how they
absolutely.
did it.
No, it's yeah, beyond me. But I guess it's why that resilience is in your blood, right? You had it.
I
It's always
think
been
so.
there.
Yeah.
Tapped
Yeah,
into
I
that.
think you're right. And I think my Italian side of those women are very strong. They are
Oh
badass
yeah.
women. I've
Oh,
got to say, like,
100%.
my God, my nonna's one of 12, and she was literally pregnant or breastfeeding for 24 years. I
That's
mean, it's
mental.
just ridiculous. You know, I'm like, blimey, I can't cope with three.
Yeah.
And she came from wealth, but her sister got cancer, so they ended up having to sell so many things to help for her treatment. Unfortunately, it
Mm,
didn't work, but they then became really, really broke. And she told me how she would try and cook what she could from the land. And
yeah.
she had 7 of her children with her and my nonna in one bedroom with a little
Mm,
bathroom and a little like sink and stuff. And
yeah.
from that, they then created their life again. Like she was incredible woman. And
Mm,
she had this analogy that always made me, I've always lived by that. So she would say, think of a family as the man is the head. So, you know, because of that day, they'd be going out to work. Should the children be the limbs, but the woman is the spine, and without the spine, it can't
mm,
function. And I'd be like,
yeah.
yes,
I've
girl.
heard that
And, you know, I'm
before.
like, have
Yeah,
you?
yeah, I have,
Oh,
yeah.
love it. So that's how I try and live by now, thinking, do you know what? I am the spine and I keep things going. So,
Do you know what though? What I'd say to you, Alessia, is you could be the whole body.
oh, I love
You can be
that.
the whole body, and you know, like and I think that's kind of where you're at right now, isn't it? You're building your life, you know, creating everything you want for yourself. And, you know, I can feel the strength within you, even when you're speaking, which is amazing to feel, because this is such a hard story and a hard thing that you've had to overcome. And I think, yeah, it's so wonderful to have you here, share your vulnerability and your openness, because it's so needed. But, you know, I guess, you know, you've told us a few moments of where you feel like you kind of gave yourself the permission to shine. But if you could put it down to like one moment, what do you think it would be that was like, right, this is it, this is the change?
I think the moment he when I was pregnant, that incident, I think that was the light bulb, the real light bulb. And then looking at my children and realizing they didn't know what real love was. That was where I stepped into that version of me that was like, it's now time. And that I wanted to show them self-love more than anything.
Absolutely.
And I think my children definitely have seen that, because I remember being in the car with my son probably about 6 months ago, and the Trolls soundtrack came on and the song Unbreakable came on. And there's a bit in it, the chorus bit, and then when it says, you know, you're unbreakable, my eldest turned to me and he went, Mummy, that's you, that's what you're like. And I was like, oh,
that's so lovely.
What constantly kept me going was my children.
Yeah, definitely. That's such a lovely story. I feel like emotional when you're telling me that. I'm like, oh my God. But that's it. It's those moments, isn't it? Those really beautiful moments, and especially for your children. And it's that, you know, we're a mirror. I always say it all the time, we're a mirror to our universe. The fact that your children are reading that and seeing that, that's so amazing. Like, I've had a few moments with my niece actually, and she asks me who bought me something. So she'll be like, who bought you that? And no one's bought me. I've bought it for myself. Everything she says is I've bought for myself. So now she's like, you bought yourself that, didn't you? And I'm like, yes, I did. So it's just teaching her that is possible, you know, and it's those moments that we get to see our legacy being created in front of us. And it's so wonderful, because I feel like your sons are going to be incredible partners, because they've witnessed both sides to this situation, haven't they? But I guess you know, for people listening, maybe they're in a difficult relationship at the moment, or, you know, maybe they're not sure, like maybe what's like a couple of signs that you would say that to look out for in maybe even anyone going into a relationship or in a relationship at the moment that they should be aware of, and then maybe like 3 key steps that they can do to kind of start to move out of it.
I think one of the key things is, if you feel like you're walking on eggshells, that's a massive red flag. You should never feel like you're treading around that person, or worried about how they react, or worried about what they'll say. And I think that's probably one big thing. Another thing is, if you feel that you're not good enough, if you feel you're not good enough, it means that they are not making you feel like you deserve. You deserve to feel like you're the best thing they've ever seen, the best thing they've ever been with. You deserve to feel like you are beautiful and clever and all of those things, you know. And I think, really think about that. And one more thing is, the relationship you're in now, or one that maybe you're going into, always ask yourself, if my daughter was in this, or my younger self, what would I say to them? How would I feel about that relationship that they're in or they're going into? And when you look at it from your inner child, or from, you know, your child's point of view, if you have a child or not, that's when it really clicks.
That's what I've said before, you know, so it's funny that you said that. Absolutely that. No, I love that so much. And it is that, isn't it? And I think, you know, our work is all about building the person up to know that they are these things. They are worthy, deserving, beautiful. So if you're going into a relationship already feeling that, you won't even attract the people that are wanting to do that. I can't tell you the amount of times that, and now this is the toxic masculine energy for me, for sure. I'm also a Leo, a double Leo, so my sun and my rising. People know, they know that they can't mess. I tell you this for a fact. I've got so many, you know, friends or family members that have had these like type of men in their relationships in their life, and I've been in a room with them and they don't even say anything to me or talk back to me, whereas they'll talk down to the waiter, they'll talk down to someone else, or, you know, another girl, or, you know, someone, because a lot of these types of men, they don't talk up to other men because it's that energy, right, that masculine energy, whereas I exude that anyway because I'm such a like bold person. Now I don't say it's masculine energy anymore, but it's strong energy. Like, I know who I am in the room.
Yeah.
And a few times I'd called them out on stuff and they wouldn't even say anything back to me. And I'm like, that is that. When you know that you are everything, you are strong, you feel aligned and worthy, those types of people don't even come into your energy field. And that's why it's so important that you do work on your self-concept and who you are on the inside, because like we said, your vibe attracts your tribe. Like the energy inside of you is what's moving outwards. It's all of this is so interconnected. And I guess you know, maybe for women that are like listening to this thinking, right, I need to leave, what would be like just a couple of steps that you would recommend to, like, even before they left, like what would be like the things that you would suggest?
Okay, I'd probably say 3 things. So one is really step into the version of you that feels strong and has that badass energy. You need to gain your power back. And to enable you to do that, you have to gain knowledge and understanding of the situation you're in. How your partner works is really vital. So knowing exactly the cycle of abuse and how to manage that is really key. So learning about that is really important. Also, it's about building your confidence and your ability to believe that you can do it. So loads of visualizations, meditations, journaling, you know, yoga, breath work, all of those things. So try and find something that you feel connected and aligned to, and use that to build yourself back up slowly. Another thing is get a bank account that they do not know about and start to put money into that. Now, some people have said to me, oh, but how do you do that when they control your bank account? What you can do is you go to a shop and you ask for cash back. Get cash back, and then you put that into that bank account. They'll never know about it that way. So there's that. So start financially building things up for yourself. And then thirdly is create a safety plan. So with the safety plan is where you put on there, you have a code word for your friends and family. Now, only share that and your story with the people you trust, who you know has no connection to your partner, because otherwise it can get back to them. So really be mindful of that. Think of a code word. So when shit hits the fan or when you're ready to go, you just literally send that code word to your friends and family, and then they know exactly what's happening and what to do. So then you kind of think of like a plan of maybe you're going to go to someone's house when you end it, or you're going to call the police and then send the code word. Then your friends and family are going to come straight away. Have maybe a little bag of stuff to then be able to just pick up and go with. I know that for me, I started to buy things like kettles and toasters and things like that, and I'd keep them in the attic where I knew he would never go to, in a box that I labeled Christmas. He would never look in that. That's what I did. And then I had a little bag of like just like underwear and pajamas, toothbrush, spare things like that, just in case. And in that safety circle, you put all the people that you trust and who you can go to when you need to go and when you need to leave. So those are probably the 3 things I would say. And if you feel that you are able to reach out to a professional, then I would definitely recommend that. But be mindful that that would then be when your partner might know the situation and what you're planning to do. So, you know, someone like me, someone like you know, just reach out to people that you feel you can talk to and get guidance from, also really helps, because you then feel you've got that support network there that is non-judgmental. So that's probably what I would say. It's probably quite a lot, but yeah.
Yeah, no, but I think it's so important, and it's so lovely to just hear that plan as well. That I think for so many people, as you know, that I guess you feel like there's no way out, whereas there is. And I've said it a few times to the people in my life that have been in this situation, that when you're in the problem, it feels like you're drowning and there's no way out around you, but all you have to do is swim. And I think that's almost what you've given us there, is that plan, you know, like it's one arm, then the next and the next, like you just keep swimming.
Absolutely.
And on the other side of this is clear water, and it's just, it's heavy and it's hard. But I really believe, like spiritually as well, that our lives are planned ahead of us before we arrive. I think that, you know, this is really woo-woo, but I just think that our soul contract is already set, and everything that we do is to build us into the person that we need to be for the world. So
absolutely,
clearly you needed to go through all of this to be, you know, the best mum you could be, the best example to your kids, but also to help so many other women in this situation. And it's so lovely to hear your story, and it's so beautiful and heartfelt. And I think probably I feel more emotional listening to it, because so much of what you've been through resonates with my own life. So I think that that's also really lovely to hear that you found your strength and your power, and why it's so important, isn't it? And like you said, if you are listening and you just want to reach out, maybe you can't afford to like use these services yet, like we have free resources and things like that you can connect
my DMs
to.
are always open. I've always said that, because I don't want finance to be the reason that a woman doesn't start creating that change for herself.
Definitely.
So yeah, absolutely.
But please tell us how people can work with you.
Yeah, so I have a one-to-one goddess package program. I also have a membership, and I've also got an online domestic abuse program. So where if you don't feel ready to talk to someone about it, then that is something you can access in your own time whenever you feel like you need to. And from that, you learn everything you need to know about domestic abuse and healing and recovery. So that is what I offer at the moment. And also my DMs are always open. I'm always talking to so many women in there, like supporting them and helping them through it, because I think that's key, is building that trust and gaining that knowledge and understanding to then have your power back. So
absolutely. No, well, thank you so much for all the amazing work you're doing, and it's so wonderful. Like when I meet someone that's so soul aligned to what they're doing, it's such a wonderful thing, and I feel it. Do you know what I mean? I really do feel it. I've met a few people that I'm like, that's questionable that you're doing this as a job, but hey ho, each to our own. But I feel like it's the people that are so in it, like lived through every part of it, that understands it fully. And one of the questions that I would have asked you before is obviously like the patterns that you repeat, but I guess we've heard that it's something you fall into again, and it's only when you choose you fully. Because I feel like so many people, and I want to speak on women because obviously that's my most sort of tapped in community, is I feel like so many women are searching for a partner that they forget that they are the relationship they have the most, with themselves. So it's like, if we could shift the focus to not looking externally for happiness and love, and actually build it for ourselves first, that we are going to go into the right relationship feeling the most aligned, feeling the most abundant. Like I said before, I just think, I've been single a long time in my life, and I know that that's everything I've been working on, over the last couple of years, is like, how can I be the best version of myself for me first, and I know that as a byproduct of that, the person that I do end up with will be amazing because I'm amazing. That's right.
Exactly. And I do feel society makes us women feel like you have to do all these things by a certain time, otherwise it's not acceptable. Like you have to have children, you have to get married, but you have to have work, but don't work too much.
Absolutely.
And being a businesswoman, especially if you want to be a mama, that's not good either. And I was on my brother's stag do, and there were two women there, and both of them don't want kids, and one of them doesn't want to get married. And I was like, hell yeah. I was like, I love that for you. And they were like, really? Yeah, because women are made to feel like we need to fit in this box, and actually we don't need to fit into no box. We need to just be ourselves and unapologetically ourselves, and live the life that we truly want to live, not by standards,
and like ever flowing and ever growing as well. Like I feel like if you want to change your mind, if you want to change your career path, if you want to change whatever you're doing, it's really okay. Like you don't have to follow one journey for the rest of your life. And I think that's something else. Like that's something I teach when I go into the schools as well. I'm like, you don't have to have it figured out now, honestly.
I love that. That's so inspirational.
Yeah, well, this is it. I think we're so programmed to, choose what you want to do in your options in year 9, and then go on and make a career out of it. It's like, what sort of boring crap is that? I'm sorry.
It's awful, isn't it? I was the only person that didn't go to uni in my whole school year, and the career woman turned around to me, she went, you're going to fail at life.
Wow.
Sorry. Yeah.
So I wish you could say to her now, you're going to fail at love. No, we don't do that. We don't do that. We just feel we feel compassion. We feel compassion for her, and we send her love.
Love and light.
Because she probably is going for a hard time, and that's probably what she did,
Absolutely.
But it's been so lovely talking to you. Like, honestly, I've really enjoyed hearing your story. Honestly, it's touched me so much. But to end off, obviously I do like a little soul to soul segment, and it's either something you wish you could tell your younger self, or a listener, just whatever right now your soul feels like it needs to share. It's your space.
Never apologize for being yourself, and always sparkle and shine. That's literally what's come to my mind.
Yes, absolutely that. Well, it's on point, eh? We're a Permission to Shine the podcast. And it is that as well. Because I think as well with your story, it's like, at any point, like, everyone tried to knock you down. And this is what I was saying. I shared a reel on this on my mentor page today. It's every time someone knocks you down, that's you as a rock. You're this little rock that's getting tumbled and tumbled and tumbled. And guess what happens at the very end of that journey? The rock breaks open and there's a diamond inside, and that's you. So it's like every part of this is all necessary. And it feels hard and difficult, but there's so much we can do in this space of reframing what's happening. You don't have to be the victim of the circumstance. You can actually manipulate that situation into working in your favor. Now, manipulation sounds like the wrong word to use because we hear it in that coercive way, but it's remolding, reframing, all of those things. And I think you know, your story was very one of that, because that moment that you thought, right, this isn't right, and maybe it was your job, or maybe it was a multiple of factors. You know, I think the universe was definitely playing some parts. I definitely think your ancestors were playing some parts, and I'd love to go back and think about what your dreams were at the time, because I'm pretty sure there was some like cryptic dreams in there for you, 100%. But yes, so lovely speaking to you, and I could speak to you all day, but yeah, it's been so wonderful to have you, and I'm sure that we will, you know, reconnect. Maybe I'll have you on again to speak about your family lineage, because that was really exciting.
God, absolutely, we can do that for sure. It's been lovely. Thank you
so much.
Thank you, my love. You take care.
And you.